Carly, and today's topic is blood. So in our blood, we are full of a bunch of different types of weights and things that are in our body that make up our entire weight. But blood is actually 7 to 8% of that body weight. So if you're a grown adult, for instance, you have about like 4.5 to 6 quarts of blood in your body, and that's a lot of blood. So today I want to talk about what blood is made of into its different components, some different types of blood, and how blood is pumped through our heart. And we're also going to be doing 2 different small little activities. So blood is super important for us because it has a lot of different functions. So for instance, one of those functions is that it carries oxygen from our lungs to all of our body cells. It will also carry waste products, and it transports a lot of nutrients for us, and it also helps us fight infections and all those bacteria that are in our body, the bad bacteria. So now that we know a lot of the functions of it, we are going to break it down into its components. So if you didn't know, blood is actually made up of a bunch of different types of things. It is made up of solids and liquids, even though it kind of just looks like a liquid. So I have percentages right here, so you can kind of guess what you think blood is made up of. If you already know, I would love to see you interact and tell us what you think it is. So it is actually made of 1 liquid and 3 different types of solids. So this first one is about 55% of that blood. So this 1 drop of blood can have all of these components in it. So this 55% is made up in our blood. What do you guys think that component is? Any guesses? That is actually something called plasma. So that is how you spell plasma. So 55% of 1 drop of blood is made up of plasma. So this plasma is that liquid, and it helps carry all of these other components, move around in our vessels and our veins and things like that. And the next one is 45% of 1 drop of blood. So what do you guys think this one is? This one may be the most common. This is what you give. It is called red blood cells. So I actually have a cool picture of a red blood cell right here, all zoomed in. And red blood cells are also called erythrocytes. So right here is a cool zoomed in picture of a red blood cell. Kind of looks like a jelly donut, doesn't it? So then we have these last 2 right here, these last 2 components of blood. And they are a very, very small portion of our blood, less than 1% for both of these guys. So this one right here, any guesses, or either of them? We're going to go with white blood cells. So this one is also called a leukocyte. So if you've ever heard of something called leukemia, that is actually cancer of the blood. And that is basically when you have a rapid production of abnormally large size white blood cells. And then the last one, any guesses on what it is? You eat off of it. Kind of sounds like what you eat off of. It's called a platelet. So these guys are also called thrombocytes. So we have leukocytes, thrombocytes, and erythrocytes. Plasma doesn't really have a cool name, but it kind of sounds pretty cool. So these guys are super important for us, and they all do different functions, just like what I mentioned in the beginning. So what I want to do now is sort of a little visual representation of all of those different types of things. So right here, to do this, you want to get a clear container like this, or you can just use any container. And this is just a fun little sensory activity to kind of feel all those different components of blood. So right here, any guesses on what this is? We said it. It is supposed to be plasma, but it's actually just water with some yellow coloring in it. And then I kind of created this little montage of all of our different types of components in the blood. So these guys, the little ping pongs, are going to be our white blood cells. And I only have about 4 in here because, remember, it's less than 1% in 1 drop of blood. So this is going to be representing 1 drop of blood. Then I cut up some little foam pieces to kind of look like little platelets. And then I have a bunch of these little like marble type things. You can also use some candy, or you can use red gel beads. Those are really fun, like the water gel beads. So these are all our solid components that are in our blood. So we need something to move those things around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour my plasma into the blood so we can have a nice big 4-component drop of blood. So now if you would like, once you've made your big drop of blood, you can go in there and feel what you've made. So you can see all those 4 different components of the blood. We have our white blood cells, remember, platelets, red blood cells, and our plasma, that liquid that's carrying all of those things around. So the next thing I kind of want to go over is different types of blood. So this is super duper important because it's good to know your type of blood if you want to give blood or receive blood and things like that. So your blood is split up. You basically get your blood type from your genetics. So genetics is basically things that you inherit from your parents. So for instance, blue eyes, you would get maybe a gene from your mom, maybe a gene from your dad, and then come together and you would have blue eyes. So the same works for types of blood. So there's 2 types of systems that make up your type of blood. One of them is called an ABO system, and the other is called an RH factor. So you have the ABO, it looks like this, and then something called an RH factor. So types of blood include A, B, and O. There's a bunch of different ones, so we're going to go ahead and write them down. So for one, you have A positive, and you also have B positive, and there's AB positive. Then there's also A negative, B negative, AB negative, and then another one that we're missing from this factor up here is the O. So there's O positive, and there's also O negative. So that's a lot of different types of blood. So this ABO system that we use is that you inherit from your parents determines the letter that you get in your type of blood, and this RH factor is how you determine if it's positive or negative. So if you have the RH factor gene, then you're positive. If you don't, it's negative. Pretty simple. So the most common type of blood, any guesses on what it is? It is actually O positive. So this is our most common. And then anyone know the rarest? It is AB negative. So those 2 right there, that is the most common, and that is the rarest of blood types. So just a fun little trivia fact for you guys today. So one more thing I wanted to show you guys before we talked about the heart and how blood flows in the heart is this fun little microscopic view of a picture. So you can see that I have a microscope right here, and that's because a lot of people use that to look closely at all the different components of blood. So this is just a zoomed in picture of what you call a blood smear. So we use this to look at all those different components. So the white part is just that plasma that it's sitting in. The little purple dots are either the white blood cells or the platelets, and then all those little red dots are all of the red blood cells. So yeah. So that's all I have for the components and types of blood. So what I want to do next is talk a little bit about the heart and how the heart pumps through our body. So right here, I have a model of a heart. No, your heart is not actually this size. Your heart is actually just about the size of your fist. So this is what your heart would look like on the inside, but it would be mostly red. The reason that you see blue and red is to show you, the blue is to show deoxygenated blood. That's where the oxygenated blood flows through, and the red is where the oxygenated blood flows through. So right here, if you put it up like this where your heart would be, it's kind of easy to determine the different parts and the different components of the heart as well. So just like the 4 components of a blood drop, there's also 4 chambers in a heart. So if we open these up right here, you can actually see some of those chambers. So I'm going to do it right here because this is the easiest way to remember it for me, and so maybe you can also remember it as well. So if you put it up to your heart like this, this is my left hand, this is my right hand. So this right here is going to be your left ventricle, and this is going to be your left atrium. Then you're going to have your right ventricle and your right atrium. So in this part right here, I want to scoot over so we can actually see the bigger piece of it. So this is a cross section of the heart right here. So again, you can see the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. So right here, through this, where these arrows are right here, is something called a valve. So these valves are used so when blood is flowing through here, once it goes into the next component, it's not going to get sucked back up through over here. So if you don't want it to get stuck in here or stuck in here, so once the blood is getting pumped and pushed through, just like our heart is pumping all the time, it's going to push through all the way here, stay here, and not leak back through there. Some complications could really happen if your valve is not working properly. Let's go back over here now. So what we're going to finish off today's project with is actually building your own heart pump model. We're not going to build a whole heart pump because that would be really difficult and you would need a lot of different materials, but we are going to basically build what one chamber would be functioning like once you pump that in there. So what you're going to need is 2 cups like this, some tape, some blood or some water with red food coloring in it, scissors, 2 straws, here's my red coloring to make my fake blood, and a balloon. I used red as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour blood into one of these cups, or water with red food coloring. So this, for instance, is going to be one chamber, and this is going to be the other. So what you're going to do next is take your balloon and cut it about right there. Get some balloon scissors so you have just the top of the balloon and then the bottom. So what I'm going to do next is stretch it out and put it over the cup that has the water in it. Like so. Nice and tight. Then what you're going to do next is you're going to cut really, really small holes in the top of this. You don't want to cut them too big, you want to make them just big enough so that a straw can fit into it. Let's cut that a little bit bigger. Even feel free to, another tip you can do is you can kind of like cut the ends of the straw like that. Make it nice and pointy so it slides in there a little bit easier. You're going to do 2 holes, one on this side and one on the other. Oops, that one wasn't too big. So I'm going to stick this end in one, nice and tight fit like that. Can you see that? Okay, sweet. And then the other one, I'm also going to cut it just because it fits a little bit better than that as well. Alrighty. So what we want to do now is we actually want to create a valve. So we're going to create a valve with this one because we're basically pumping the blood through here using the air, and then the blood is going to come out of this one. But we don't want it to go back into this other chamber that it was in. We want it to go into the next one. So what you're going to do is fold this over like so. Put the balloon around it. Can you see it? Okay, sweet. And then get some tape. You can do this before you put it in as well, like so. So let's make sure that was folded. Balloons are tricky. There we go. And tape it around. So this balloon right here is acting as our valve. And then we are almost complete. Nice and tight. Like so. So put it back in here. And this may get a little messy, so feel free to put both of these in a tray or something like that, just so it doesn't get as messy and make it a little messy here, so we will see, but it's okay. So what you're gonna do next is our chambers pump. Our heart is pumping all the time. So what we have to do now is we have to pump one of these chambers. So to do that, you are simply going to be pushing down like this, and you can see kind of that it's rising in this, in the blue straw right here, but it's not rising in here because we have that valve that's shutting off that airflow. You can kind of see it like that. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna push a little harder and see if we can get it going into the rest of our body. So this is our body over here. So let's see. So right now you have created your own heart pump, oops, there it goes, heart pump model. So the harder you push, the more it's gonna fly out. Also feel free to kind of angle it a little bit different. But if you have a tray, it's gonna work a lot better and it's not gonna spill everywhere. So if you have any questions about how blood works, there's so many different things you can learn about blood and talk about blood. I kind of had to narrow it down for you guys because I got lost. So if you have any questions, please comment down below, or yeah, just let us know what you guys have and what you learned, and hopefully you guys continue to watch some of our videos, and we hope to see you guys soon. Thank you.